he is a mainstay here in Seattle. He's done a lot of great stuff in the technology space across various industries, across various enterprise companies. And he is the architect, CEO, and founder of Dragon Chain. Please give it up for Joe Roets.
Hello. Do we have a deck up, or do you know? Yep. And okay, so first of all, thanks for putting this together, because I mean this is really great group. I mean all the best people. Jonathan asked me to make the most boring speech possible so that we can move to the after hours thing. So you can blame him, all right? And one way or another, so the untapped power of blockchain, it's this little abstract, a little philosophical, so apologies in advance. One way or another, I've been in this space for quite a while. I'm a very software-centric guy, open source, security scaling. I've been a software architect for over 25 years, and I did a lot of pretty interesting projects. And in 2010, one of my guys brought in the Bitcoin white paper into our research group, and we started looking at it, and it really kind of blew me away, because all of the individual pieces already existed. They were all understandable. It was just the combination in this feedback loop that was really interesting. And because of my background, I was already really interested in applying it. And so we just started building stuff, and we started playing with it. And stupidly, I didn't buy enough, but we were actually using it and really testing out the different ideas. And slowly, I moved on, did different things for startups, and they were always hyper focused on one thing. But as an architect, I was really interested in what could be done. And I'll go into some of the history later of the company, but I got a position at Disney, and we started building a lot of different use cases. A lot, for me, it was just a way to test the architecture. So all of these things I've been thinking of for years, we could start throwing real problems at them and seeing where the architecture broke. And so one way or another, this presentation generally is about what is actually important and different about blockchain and cryptocurrency, because it's typically glossed over. A lot of times, you have so many different contexts of how people look at the technology that a lot of times this is missed. And so I'm going to go through that. So it starts with software itself. So it became a big deal. It was already a big deal, but it became very obvious to everyone in the 90s and early 2000s with .com. Andreessen says software is eating the world. I mean, it's basically about the fact that everything was being disrupted by software, right? Whether it's travel, entertainment, social, advertising, any place that it was applied, seemingly, there were a lot of failures, of course, but it was actually disrupting for real what was being done. And the interesting thing about that is this software. So you can make very efficient systems with software, more efficient than existed before, especially when the internet and connectivity's in there. But it always required a lot of sweat. It required a lot of human leadership, organization, intent, and evaluating what was really needed, right? And the ones that got that right, succeeded. Thousands of others failed, right? Because it's hard. It's a very hard thing to do. It's hard to deliver software of any kind on time and with whatever budget you're given, let alone with the people are fickle, right? So whatever you're doing, you just have to get everything right. I mean, all of the stars have to align. Everything has to be perfect for success, right? And at least in my opinion, I mean, the primary interesting thing about blockchain and cryptocurrency itself is the capture of time. That is, before blockchain, I could hold up a newspaper, right? Man lands on the moon, and you would know generally, at least it's not very measurable, but you would generally know that that picture was taken after a man walked on the moon. The thing you could never do is determine how much later that picture was taken, because I could take it today just as I could in 1970, and it wouldn't tell you anything extra. So with blockchain, it allows you to actually put an end time in that fixation. That I can now measure the likelihood that this event happened between two distinct points in time, right? And it's maybe not the most important thing, except for a very small number of use cases. If you're trying to figure out if bin Laden is still alive, if you're trying to figure out, when I actually took this picture, it doesn't matter a lot for business. But what it does do is it allows you to order events. So now I can actually solve the problem of a double spend, or passing an asset in a decentralized way, because we can all agree that my balance was X because all of these events led up to that, and we can agree based upon the if it's Bitcoin, the proof of work, or some angle of the proof involved. And that led to the thing that I think really drives the reason that it's become a big thing, because when I started looking at it, it was a very geeky thing. I talked to people about it; they didn't get it. I talked to my neighbors, who then years later would blame me for not telling them to buy some, right? But that one way or another, it was just an extremely interesting thing for software and for how what's possible in building these new systems in ways that just open up markets. And it ends up being that it combines marketplace capabilities with software, right? So for the first time, I have the ability to produce a piece of software that can be self-driven. At least theoretically, I mean, I can participate, but I don't have to actually be involved in the adoption of this software, because if I properly tune it, the people that I want to adopt it will adopt it. The people that I want to do something will do that something, or at least they will be incentivized to it. It's still an interesting thing, because it's up to you whether you take part, whether you want to profit or to gain from that ecosystem. But generally, I have the ability to incentivize you. And a marketplace, and this is philosophical, but in my opinion, it's faster and more valuable than AI, machine learning, and pretty much anything else, because you are using people's minds and people's information to get you. It's the fastest way from point A to point B across the board. If you put a marketplace and there's the ability for someone to profit from it, it will happen. You don't have to say, oh, I have to figure out all these variables and I have to design everything without full knowledge. The knowledge is already out there. At least the better knowledge than I could possibly have as a person or on a team is already out there. And all you have to do is make it valuable or profitable for those people to provide that information to the system, right? And they're providing it to each other. There's transparency. There are a lot of other really good, valuable things that come out of it. But it's all about incentive-driven adoption, and the fact that software drives humans to whatever that objective is. So you decide, in my system, these are the goals. This is what I want people to do, And it might be I want them to sign up. It might be I want them to provide information that they might not otherwise provide. And there's some really crazy ways to describe that. If we have time, I'll go into that. But it's an interesting thing because with it, you can do a lot of things you wouldn't expect. As Satoshi, right? So you have Bitcoin. Satoshi did not travel the world to bring this technology in. I mean, he had a sufficiently produced algorithm that incentivized people to mine and potentially over time to use the technology, right? And it spawned all the rest of these, right? And there's a lot of interesting politics around where we're at right now with that, but it's extremely interesting that it's not been broken. It has it is, for what it is, a very simple purpose, just this currency exchange. And a lot of what we've done is take that and apply it to other actual use cases, and that's what led to Dragon Chain and why it's we have a really high priority on the flexibility and the ability to treat it like if you're in the early 90s and someone asks you, what should I not use the internet for, right? That's totally the wrong answer and wrong question. And we've gotten that question, especially early in our project, on where should we not use blockchain? And my answer is the same. It's we don't know. It's like you really, there should be no limits. It should be sufficiently designed, architecturally designed, so that anyone could come in and use something that I'm not ever expecting, right? That's the whole point of it. Because everything's a marketplace. And they asked me to give some examples of this because it's a little bit abstract, but as an example, at a very, very large organization that we have built some of these things, you can imagine there's a lot of politics between engineering groups, right? As it turns out, we built some prototypes and did some experimentation there, and it ends up that when you step back and you look at it, these interactions among these different groups are all they amount to a political economy, that people are playing politics with each other and with their connections, and really the transparency is not there because your boss is playing the game too, and so they have high turnover. It's a really nasty environment. The teams don't know what other teams are doing because they're gaming the system, and everybody knows this. It's constant, right? And so if you take that and you replace it with transparency first, and then you sufficiently, and with Dragon Chain, it's an interesting case because you don't have to get it right the first time, that you can take all the data, make the transparency happen so there's an immediate value for everybody involved. I can say, oh, I didn't know you guys were doing that, right? On top of the fact, you can also, if you need to, you can take that proof that somebody's doing something to up the chain. You can say, look, and so that was helpful at least, but when you then apply a currency, so you look at all the data that's there and you can say, okay, we didn't know that this group was doing this, and we didn't know that this group was doing that, and we can say, okay, we're going to call them a good actor and a bad actor, and we're going to say, I want to reward, incentivize the bad actor to start acting like the good actor. And they might not get it perfect, but sooner or later they'll realize when you are charging for your services that the good actor is front of the line all the time. They get what they want right away. The bad actor has to wait in line. There's like, what gives, and things cost them more, or depending on how you model it. And it's really effective because all of a sudden, everyone knows who's doing what, and everyone is immediately rewarded. And whether it's an individual or a team, you have that transparent knowledge that I can do my actual job. I'm an engineer. This is what I do. I don't want to play the politics. I was hired to do this, right? And you're able to actually follow and potentially influence those rules to make things more efficient. So on the high end, up high enough in the chain, they like it because they can see what's happening. Things are more productive, turnover's down, all the good things. But then there are all these different things you can apply once all of the groups are in that type of system. Another example would be, and I can't give the exact example, but it's like, say you think about a time-based marketplace. So if I'm in a theme park that I have no currency except my time, right? And once I'm in there, it's Cuba, right? There's a line for everything. Everyone's equal, right? And yet there's no transparency. I could take my kids who want to go on a ride and tell them, it's like, well, it's a 2-hour wait right now. You know, I have no information available to me at all about whether the line will be longer in an hour or shorter in an hour. So what do? I just have to eat it and spend my time, you know, and I'm literally spending the only medium of exchange that I have, which is time. And if instead you take the same approach and get all of the information available, you virtualize the lines. I mean, everybody does that already. You know, Starbucks does that. Any place you go that I'm going to order ahead and just go pick it up, that already exists. That's nothing new. But the interesting part is to put slots and actually formalize the scarcity. That, you know, this train runs once every 2 minutes, and there are, you know, 18 slots on the train. Or this show happens every 30 minutes, and there are 500 seats, right? So there's the scarcity you already have. Why do you have a line when you could put that up there, create a transparent marketplace, and you don't have to have, you know, shorting and crazy stuff, but it can just be something where I can see as a consumer that immediately that in 30 minutes it's not that the line is shorter, but the charge is less, right? So I have this currency that instead of you know, you might actually tokenize time if you wanted, but either way, that I can actually then make that determination myself as the consumer. Do I want to pay more and go now? Do I want to pay less and go when the demand is not as high? Maybe it's over dinner or something when nobody, you know, everybody's eating dinner. So and then basically all of those what would be lines even out. You have a more efficient distribution because people are able to see, oh, it's slightly cheaper here. I don't care. I'll wait 30 minutes, right? What's the big deal? And on top of the fact, then you have an actual medium of exchange. So if something goes wrong, you can reward them in a way that they can actually use. You don't have to determine, oh, you know, you're not happy. You know, here's a free ride, and like, the kid's sick. I'm not going to take the free ride. But if you can give me a medium of an exchange, then I might not be able to afford otherwise souvenirs or, you know, something else. It's just all of a sudden everything's more transparent and actually fair, even though it's, you know, it is a marketplace. It is a capitalist thing, but, you know, it's so those are two. But basically anything you look at, again, my opinion, anything you look at, there is a marketplace present, whether you intended to create a marketplace or whether you want to recognize it. There's a marketplace, and as you know, there's social, there's you know, actual, anything you look at. So that's it. I can go over. I mean, the reason that it matters to Dragon Chain is because we really try to make the most flexible platform possible. It's hybrid, so you can stow away, hide the sensitive data, the sensitive business logic. There's no exposure, and the reason this is there architecturally is because we had to make it possible for a business to totally get it wrong the first time, right? Because that's, again, software is hard to deliver. You know, in the 90s, it was hard to deliver. Non-blockchain software today is hard to deliver with a budget. It's hard to estimate. It's hard to get the right people on the team. And to imagine that you're going to come in and model your complex economy that no one else understands, and you don't even have all the information yet, and to do whatever game theory considerations you might have, and to deal with the decentralized computing and all the rest of it is pretty ridiculous to expect that anyone would ever get it right. And yet, most of the platforms, that's pretty well what's required. That you have to put it out there and hope that you get it at least close. And one of our big goals was to make it so that you can develop the currency, and you don't even have to have a currency on our platform. You can just use the ledgering aspect, the proof of existence. You can do various other things, and we're also, I guess, one big interesting component. We're doing a lot of interchain work now, and we're actually seeing a big uptick in the developer community with trying to understand better and just the amazing ideas that are coming out of that. That again, we had not considered. Where if I can build on Dragon Chain and I can watch for interactions with a smart contract or with a token on Ethereum, do some processing on Dragon Chain, and then cause something else to happen on Neo or EOS, or that all of a sudden becomes an almost RESTful-like internet pattern, where it's very generic. You can pretty much do anything you could ever expect. And the beauty for us is that we don't have to necessarily consider some of these products or chains as competitors. That they're more of it's a capability that we can tap. So if someone comes out with a better way to deal with quantum computing, and an aliens land, and here's quantum computing, and everything's broken, we can plug into this better quantum safe algorithm. And it's that type of thing where there's a lot less risk, and there's a lot more ability to pivot with this. So anyway, that's kind of everything. I don't know if you have questions. I don't know how you're doing questions.
So this is available today. So if you have something like the examples you gave, marketplace dynamic, which I agree is kind of ubiquitous, whether you realize it or not, you can use your platform to configure it with your own use case. Now, like that exists today.
Yes, and in fact, you could do it as of October 2016 when we open sourced. It was harder then because it was, we were focused very much on, we had our own platforms, and we didn't have to worry about deployments and things like that. So when we put it out there, and I wasn't being paid for it. It was just, it's an open source project now, and it was like my second job, and people would ask questions, and I realized pretty quickly that we're missing a lot of the pieces on, just the ease of use. There's a huge threshold to get in because you had to have a good sysadmin. You had to have a good, Linux guy or Unix guy. You had to have a lot of things that were kind of secondary to what the people were trying to actually do, right? And we actually launched this in 2017 to fix that issue, where we knew, as an example, because of the architecture, that it had really unique scaling possibilities because it's hybrid. So our lowest level, it's pure trust, but that means your dev can code in a language they understand with best practices that they've known for 20 years, with everything. And when we talked to IBM about this, that was their security guys he pivoted. He's like, hey, blockchain, it's not secure, even though what they're doing. But the fact that we were talking about this meant all of the things that he already knew and actually knew were still true, and that as you go up through our consensus, because we have 5 built-in levels, and you can create your own, but they're all from different contexts for different reasons on the security and making sure that this is that this event really happened. That you end up with a full trust list. Like, say, when we open sourced, we had only Bitcoin. Now we have Bitcoin, Ethereum Classic, and I think Neo's this month. I can't remember. But we're basically expanding that greatly, and the intent on that is so that you can say, and it keeps going on. I could go for hours and hours on this, but that they you can measure I could say, I'm not going to accept a $20 million transaction from you unless $20 billion worth of hash power has passed on Bitcoin, right? And it's really interesting component, I think, for like insurance and other things. So, yes, yeah. And we can mirror, like say, we can mirror currencies. So you can have multiple currencies on any Dragon chain, and you can mirror them to public chains. So I can actually have the same keys and swap stuff back and forth. And we're doing a bunch of stuff coming up on that that'll be really interesting on how we avoid some of the fees and yet make things happen. So anyway.
So first of all, thank you for the time. Appreciate it. If I could wave the magic wand, what would you want to see from the broader Seattle ecosystem to better support the blockchain?
I mean, I will say it's interesting. Things are moving really well, right? I mean, it's like this. I mean, Seattle is really interesting to me because, like, say, we created the Blockchain Seattle meetup just to announce Dragon Chain because I didn't think it was appropriate to go to the Bitcoin meetup or to go to the Ethereum meetup, right? And so we did that for open source, and for a while it was the biggest generic blockchain meetup in the country. I don't know if it still is, right? I haven't watched that, but one way or another, it's like I was amazed because we treated it just as it was an agnostic technology forum where you could come in, and we had business people, we'd have traders, we'd have miners, we'd have anything you could think of under the sun coming in and asking what they or their bosses wanted to know, and we were able to tell them, and with my background, I could actually answer what I'd seen, and what, some things I might not know, but so wave a magic wand. I mean, probably more crypto-friendly VC, maybe. So it's like however that works, and political. Some of it's national. It's not necessarily Washington State, right? Gosh, I don't know. You have the weird. I will tell you. So I moved. I'm from the Midwest. I moved to the East Coast, and I moved here from the East Coast. And the weirdest thing for me was moving to the West Coast for Disney in Seattle because I didn't know some of the politics that I was seeing. Whether is this West Coast flakiness? Is this Seattle cold? Or is this the entertainment industry? Right. So it's like this. So maybe some of that. It's like it seems to be a lot of that's generally going well. So.
Well, let's give Joe Roets a round of applause, closing us down. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that.